All right, so I'm going to go ahead and start this meeting at 4:04 p.m. Thank you to all for joining. Before I share my presentation, if we could just do, we kind of already did it, but if we could do a quick round of introductions, just your name, who you are representing, and your favorite thing about summer so far. All right, let's start with Gisela.
Hi, my name is Gisela Echeverria. I'm representing both CAT as a board member, but then also One Community Health. I'm an outreach manager at One Community Health. Let's see, one thing I'll hear about. Well, fruit. I'm definitely gonna miss the fruit. I got 2 large boxes of blueberries that I froze. So yeah, loving the blueberries right now, and I'm just trying to freeze most that I can right now because then it's gonna be tough. Good blueberries in the fall and winter. But yeah.
Awesome. Kate.
I'm Kate Harrison. I work at Providence Detman House as a service coordinator, and my favorite part of summer so far is the waterfront and the wind.
All right, Kevin.
Kevin Liberty, City Putter. Boy, the blueberries. I will agree with that one. I've had some amazing success with blueberries so far this season. Otherwise, not too much to report. Couple of camping trips, mostly staring at the screen in the office. Kind of a bummer of the summer so far, but thank
you. All right, Sarah.
Sarah Cook, travel trainer for Hood River and Wasco counties. And my favorite part about summer is late summer. I like late August and September weather. So
yeah. I don't disagree with you there. Elazar.
Hi, my name is Elazar Reyes. I'm the facility maintenance supervisor at One Community Health. And for summer, I'm just loving the weather. I don't like driving in the snow, and car season has officially started, so I'm good.
And Elazar is also one of our board members too. Lexi.
Hey everyone, I'm gonna leave the camera off. I'm not feeling super well today, but Lexi, I work with Pacific Source and Medicaid as the senior community health coordinator. And our garden has just decided to start exploding with produce. And so it's been fun. I brought like 20 squash to the gym yesterday and was handing it out in the parking lot to strangers. And it was just, you know, fun community building and always enjoying having extras to share. And yep, that's probably where I'm at today too. Pretty lame summer so far. Not a lot of travel, just a couple of camping trips and a lot of time at home with the garden and the dogs.
I think that's pretty great. So just so I can play this game, even though you guys all know who I am, I'm Amy Schlappy, the executive director here at CAT. I think my favorite thing about summer right now is, so we have started growing kiwi berries. We planted them like 3 years ago, and they're actually like producing fruit this year. So to me, that's pretty huge. Also, I'm planning all my winter and spring trips. So that is the other thing that I'm very excited about and have been working on. Yeah, okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we are going to be, oops, hold on, I need to first. Share my screen with you all so that you can see what we're looking at. All right, can you guys see my screen, the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So today we're going to be talking. Hold on, why isn't this? All right, so today we're gonna kind of just review, since we have some new members, but also since it's been a while since we had a meeting, we're gonna review the responsibility of the STIF Advisory Committee, as well as review our highlights from this past year. And then we're gonna go through some of the staff ideas for the upcoming STIF plan. So Statewide Transportation Improvement Plan is going to look at how we spend for fiscal year 2025 through 2027, is looking specifically at how we spend the money for the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund formula dollars. Typically, our Hood River City route has been funded by that. A large amount of our Upper Valley, our dial ride, and some of the match for some of our other services. So we'll go kind of through that, but that time I would really like to use to kind of give you my ideas, but I want to hear your feedback of what your thoughts are. Make sure it's meeting the needs of the people you represent, specifically low-income seniors, individuals with disabilities, but also the general public. And we can kind of use that as a starting off point to have a discussion. Cool. So the responsibility of this meeting is to help me and my staff understand what the needs are for individuals and people with disabilities, seniors, or local individuals. We want to make sure that our services are meeting those needs, and we need help from the community to do that. Also, the goal is to assist the board in tasks and duties supporting local and regional transportation services. So what does that mean? What are the major tasks? So advising staff on coordination opportunities to avoid duplication of services or programs. Participate in updating our coordinated transportation plan, which happens about every 3 years. That is something that just happened in the past year or so. And then review STIF grant applications. So under the Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund funding, there's discretionary grant programs. So those are some grant programs that we will apply for like pilot programs or for capital goods. And then of course there's the formula fund projects, which is the another bucket underneath STIF funding that is kind of automatically allocated to us, but we need to use it for specific purposes. All right, so another thing, just to kind of add on to this, I am going to be asking the board, so Gisela and Elzar, you kind of get a preview, to update the bylaws for this committee. So currently, the members that are on this committee, the requirement is between 5 and 7. Per the ORS, we can actually have it, because our county is less than 50,000, the requirement can be at least 3 people. So I'm going to be asking the board to just change it from 5 to 7 to 3 to 7. With the purpose there, kind of giving us some leniency and making sure that we have people who are really involved and have the time to be here. Any questions on that? Any concerns with that recommendation to the board?
Amy, this is Kevin Liberty, City Forever. I'm just going to check the statute real quick. I wasn't familiar with it. I saw the topic on the agenda, but didn't have the background information. So are we going to be voting on that and do a minute just to take a quick peek at the language?
Yeah, I mean, I can look at it for you if you'd like to, but essentially it just makes it so instead of requiring at least 5 advisory members, we can do 3 advisory members. And I can send you the actual language when I have it drafted up more. I think the intent was just to see if you guys had any concerns, and if there were, I'm happy to kind of hold off on it. It's just, sometimes it can be really hard finding committee members for this committee. And then, it sometimes can be hard to ensure that there's then not only enough people to be on the committee, but then that they're showing up on a regular basis. Which is why the thought of making it to at least 3 people instead of 5 people. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, makes sense to me, understood. And I will dig up the statute. I'm looking at 732 right now. I'm seeing 732.040, not dash 040, so I'll get to it.
Yeah, and then you just go down all the way until 7. And then it just, because we have less than 50,000 people. I can also send the statute out too.
And I don't want to hold up the conversation.
Oh, you're good. And I can also bring this back to our next meeting as well. If you'd like me to have the drafted up bylaws and just if there's any additional information that you're thinking. I don't need any recommendation necessarily to the board to bring it up to them. I mostly just wanted to run it by you to see if you had any concerns.
No initial concerns for me. Thank you.
Okay. And if you would, would you like more information though, or would anybody like more information about that change or?
Yeah, I'd like to share it with the city manager if I could. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
I don't have any concerns. I can see how, I guess, it would be impactful to like actually have people who are committed to the position rather than just feeling like a number you're trying to.
Yeah.
So I see that. I understand where you're coming from.
I think my goal is still to have around that 5 to 6 range, because I want more people who are representing the different demographics. I think that the problem is when I have to get votes on things, so that's not a problem necessarily at this meeting, but at other meetings, it can sometimes be hard to get that quorum. So I think that's why it originally popped up as something to change. But Kevin, I will send all that information to you.
Thanks, Amy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And I think another thing too is like a really great part about the group that we have right now is the fact that some of my board members also represent their communities. That kind of, sorry, this is really loud. I should be able to, well, no, I can't do that. Okay. Yeah, the fact that you guys also represent the different community members is kind of helps make it so that we can meet the requirements that we currently have. Okay. All right, so going to the end of year highlights. So I submitted an end of year report to you all with the meeting materials, but I also wanted to just show the highlights. So for service operations, so the first project, we did cancel the Cascade Locks deviated fixed route. It just was not a high ridership and it wasn't really helping people who wanted to use it as a fixed route or folks who needed to use the door-to-door service. So as a reminder, so we have 3 kind of different services. We have fixed route, demand response, or sorry, 2 major groups, fixed route and demand response. Fixed route is their specific stops that have scheduled times when we stop them, and there's a specific dedicated route. Then for the demand response, the goal of those routes are to meet more individualized needs and can be customized pickup drop-offs. Underneath that demand response bucket, you have deviated fixed route, which is a mix between fixed route. So there's a couple stops that are fixed and they have scheduled times that we stop at them, but it can also deviate from that route to do customized pickups and drop-offs. We also have dial-a-ride, so that's where we just do door-to-door service. The deviated fixed route does not work very well. It does not give good service to those who need the fixed route times because it's not reliable, meaning because of the deviations, it very rarely stops at its designated times on time. And it doesn't provide good service to those who need that door-to-door service. In general, I am working on trying to fix the deviated fixed route services that we have. Now that we have removed the Cascade Locks one, the only remaining one is the Upper Valley, and I have some ideas for that I'll share in a little bit. But we did cancel that, but we did expand our dial-a-ride service area. So our dial-a-ride does go to Cascade Locks now. So we do give better service to the folks who need that door-to-door service. Not surprisingly, that ridership has increased by quite a bit from this past year, fiscal year, which ended June 30th, from the prior year, so fiscal year 2023. The Upper Valley has decreased by 17%. That's the issue with a deviated fixed route. It doesn't serve anybody really all that well. And funding has been applied to expand dial-a-ride and transition Upper Valley to fixed route. So I've applied for grant funding that would allow me to make the Upper Valley deviated fixed route a fixed route only, and then it would allow me to expand my dial-a-ride so I could give better service to the folks in the Upper Valley. What exactly that would look like if we get that funding is still kind of what we're figuring out, meaning what the route would look like for the Upper Valley and the times and the frequency, but also how we would do the dial-a-ride. The dial-a-ride needs to be available for any local fixed route. There needs to be some sort of demand response or complementary paratransit piece, meaning so people who cannot use fixed route, they have means to get around. But you can restrict that to a degree. So there's a number of options you can do in order to provide some sort of demand response service. You can make it open to the general public, which is what we have right now. However, if it's in an area where that's going to easily be if that's going to be too, I guess that's kind of a hard way to say that. It's if there's not going to be the capacity to meet demand, then there's ways to restrict who that actually service people can use that service. So it could be just people who are part of our complementary paratransit service, who have essentially gone to their doctor, confirmed that they can't use the fixed route, and so they're an ADA client in our books, and so then we could serve just those people. There's ways we can play with it if our demand is over our capacity. Sorry, that was probably a lot of information, but there you go. The Hood River City Route ridership has increased by 16%. We haven't made any changes. It's increased. The only things that I can really think of is of things that we've done differently is we have our downtown Hood River program, downtown employee Hood River program, where we gave free passes to downtown employees with the partnership of the city. We've doubled the amount of passes that we gave out this year compared to the prior year. Our Gorge Transit Connect program, where we're working with the low-income individuals and different community partners to distribute those passes. We have expanded that program. Sarah has done a great job of making more connections and giving out more passes to community members who need it. So, yeah. So I think those are the main things that I can point to as to why we continue to see an increase. That, and I think people are just getting more familiar and more comfortable with the bus. Hood River Connect service was also canceled. So that was a service that was primarily just trying to connect CAT with the downtown. Because right now with our current Hood River City route, as you may know, in order to get from CAT to downtown, you have to go all the way around on the circulator route. And that's about 30 minutes. And so we had tried a connector service. The ridership was low on that. And so we did cancel that service as well. Gorge to Mountain ridership has increased by 15%. So while that is a service that is seasonal and it goes between Hood River and Mount Hood Meadows and primarily is helping folks to get to recreation, I thought it was interesting to include because we do pay for some match with the STIF funds, but also over the past couple of years, we have gotten a lot more participation with the local ski teams. So they are using our services to go up to practice. And it's allowing kids who might not have the opportunity to be on a ski or snowboard team to be on it. So that, I love telling that story. And then Columbia Gorge Express ridership increased by 14%, which is also great. And we expanded the service on April 27th. So we went into our summer service hours. So year round, we do 7 trips a day, 7 days a week. And then in the summer, we do 9 trips a day. Any questions on that before I move on? Okay. All right, so for project 2, mobility services. So we have continued to provide our Gorge transit passes. So these are low, as you guys probably know, low fare or low cost annual passes. So $40 for an adult, $80 for a dial-a-ride pass. So all you can use dial-a-ride in a year, and then $20 for a youth. We've continued to remain low. We haven't increased that since I think 2021. We had 752 student or low income passes distributed during the fiscal year of 2024. The van pool program was launched. We have had some difficulty signing up businesses. We have not yet signed up businesses, which is unfortunate. And I'm not exactly sure kind of how to change that. I just wasn't as popular as we were hoping it would be. The downtown employee pass program, as I said, we've doubled the passes that were distributed. And we did update ridecapbus.org to improve the user experience. So we changed the front page to show a map, so it's a little bit more clear as to where our services go. Also a little bit more, we've given more space to service alerts, so it's easier to see when there's closures because of fires or because of snowstorms, etc. Okay, and then also Ms. Sarah Crooks has done a great job in increasing awareness with vulnerable populations and has conducted several one-on-one travel training sessions. Sarah, anything, I'm totally putting you on the spot here, but anything you'd like to add of what maybe your favorite accomplishment has been of this year?
I don't know. I guess the word is getting out. And I really enjoyed the field trip I took with the Circle of Care volunteers a couple of months ago, introducing them to the system so they can get their clients on the bus. And a few of those volunteers ended up buying passes. We went from the Dalles transfer station all the way to Cascade Locks and had lunch and went back again. And then I also really enjoyed the MetaQuest field trip I did with some high schoolers, and we ended up taking the fixed route, changing buses and heading back. So that was pretty fun too. So
Yeah, and I think the really neat thing that I'm seeing with having Sarah on board and just having the fact that the word has gotten out that we have a travel trainer available is that I now have drivers coming to me and saying, hey, there was this rider, this issue happened. I think this would be a really good example for where Sarah could come in and help this rider understand how to use the service a little bit better. We could get them more resources so they can successfully use the system.
I do have to say, yes, that's been the case a couple times. And although a few of those writers didn't turn into some long-term teaching experience, it was just 1 or 2 rides and working with that writer one-on-one. Like, let's, what tools can we use to manage anxiety? What are the things that are triggering you? What are, different things like that. And we check in every once in a while. And I actually have a coffee date with one of the veterans tomorrow for Wasco County veteran coffee. So it's pretty cool.
And so we do use, to kind of tie in how this kind of works with the STIF funds, we use a portion of the STIF formula funds to pay for the match for the grant that pays for Sarah's time. All right, so for capital projects, so we have some grants that the buses have not yet been delivered. They're supposed to be coming any day. We're really excited for this. But we will be using some of the formula funds for the match requirement for that. And then we have the 4th project, which is Program Reserve. These are funds that have been restricted so we can use them for unexpected expenses. Mostly what we're seeing is some additional operational expenses that are not covered with our current grants. Because we have seen such a high jump from inflation and fuel costs and just everything in between. That wasn't something that we could predict really 3 years ago. So we're now taking that so we can learn for this next grant applications of the costs that we really need to apply for in order to cover all of our expenses. But we've had to use some of the STIF funds to cover operational expenses because of that. And so for those of you who may not know, so when I am applying for funds, so not only do we have our budget, we're mostly grant-based. So everything that all of our operations come from grant funds, whether they're from the state or federal sources. And then we also have local property taxes that we can use for some of that match, as well as STIF formula funds. We can use STIF formula funds for match. That is the only grant that we can use for that. But we have to apply for those funds 3 years before they really become applicable. So we have to make our best case estimate for what expenses are going to be. And because of COVID and all the things, it was really hard to estimate. Okay. So, any questions on any of those projects? I'm sorry, I didn't give a chance to pause after project 2 and 3. Any questions?
You mentioned that you distributed classes for the students. How did that?
They definitely use them. I see them every day, which is great. Love that. The distribution process to schools still needs to be figured out. I have not been able to really crack that. This year, so there's the resource fair next week that we're going to be there. Also, I talked to Patricia Cooper from the school district today, and she's going to include that in her training to administrators of how to what passes are, how to distribute them, and then who to contact when they're out of passes. we were running into a lot of parents were coming to us and saying, hey, the school doesn't have any passes, but we didn't know about that. So we're trying to fix that process and make sure they have all the resources they need, but they know who to contact here so that we can get them more passes.
And Amy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was also, we had brainstormed putting some flyers up in the school to make students aware. And yeah, so just throwing that in.
The other thing that I am trying to do is trying to get on the school district agenda or school district board agenda so that I can do a presentation and share what is available to hopefully kind of just broaden the awareness out there. Because I know that those board meetings are typically fairly attended.
I mean, my brother, he's a high schooler.
Does he have a free pass?
Yeah, pass.
Oh,
yeah,
good.
He uses those too.
Great.
But I would say, at least for a team, I could see them like using it for like if they have to go to a job or something. I'm not sure if they've been using it for that purpose, but I'm glad that,
Yeah, so anecdotally, I can say when I take the bus home, I see high school kids on it all the time. It could be just after school, they're going into downtown or going back home. But also during the summer, I'm seeing a bunch of them use it during a variety of times during the day, whether going to work or just hanging out, going to Mike's.
Yes, they have like a safe option.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's our goal. And I would say there's, and again, this is anecdotally, but over the past, I want to say 3 years, I am really seeing a wide range of demographics on our bus, especially the Hood River City bus, of people who are using it. Okay. Any questions?
I couldn't hear that conversation super well. But
sorry.
I think there was discussion about student passes. And I noticed some information in the memo that you put out about a summer program for students in Cascade Locks and an opportunity to win a prize, as well as posters to increase awareness. So was the prize a good incentive?
Sarah, what do you think?
So we started a pilot program this summer in Cascade Locks. It was inspired by the elementary school teacher, or excuse me, elementary school principal there when I went down for their art walk and we were talking. And she just really wanted her kids out for the summer, didn't want them walking down the same strip, buying the same ice cream cone. And I just brainstormed and we came up with this program where, since it's a pilot program, it's fairly simple. They catch the bus from Cascade Locks, they end up at CAT, and we gathered 4 different prizes. So when they get to CAT, they check in, they get their name. And so the first time they get an ice cream cone to Mike's. The second time is a pass to the swimming pool. The third time is Pietro's kids menu pizza, and then the fourth time is a pedicab from Matt. He donated a half hour of his time. We budgeted for 20. I think as it stands now, we've got 4 that have participated. I'm on the agenda next week for Cascade Lock City Council meeting. So along with travel training, I'll definitely mention the program in a little more detail. So hopefully the word will get out. But yeah, it's just a way to get the kids involved in riding the bus. So.
Thanks, Sarah. Sounds cool.
Yeah, so I think they're pretty decent. And I think we've got 4 kids, so that's not too shabby. But I'm very excited to see kind of at the end of the program kind of where we are at, and if we can get a couple of those writers to give us feedback on if those incentives were worth it or not.
And this was a very last minute program put together at mid-June. I think we instilled it the first week of July. So it's a pilot program. We're going to take what we learn and hopefully start it maybe more around Memorial Day next year. See maybe how it could play with the Hood River City route. I don't know. All depends on budgets, I suppose. So
If we're successful, I know Goldendale did an event where, it was like, the bagel cart, where they had to like use their own guidance transit, and I don't think it was actually, the intention was for, the public to actually go to all these different community organizations,
Yeah.
and in return, they would raffle.
Oh, wow, that is good.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fun. Yeah, it's,
yeah.
yeah. And I think that's too something that we can put in the STIF plan for 23-25 to put some more of these pilot programs that are specific to students. I mean, they would still be under one bucket for outreach, but we can include that that is the intent of the advisory committee, that there's enough funds to maybe expand that program, to maybe in the city of Hood River, and Upper Valley. But maybe there's some other programs that can be targeted more to the students, or just youth in general.
Yeah, we have a big, great, talking about my parents, their guardian, so. it's
Yeah.
great. Great.
Well, and the thought that I always have for students of why I think it's really important to get them on the bus is we want them to feel comfortable in this space, right? We want them to get used to using public transit so that when they go abroad or they go, they move to different cities, wherever their life takes them, they feel comfortable. It's not like, oh, wow, this is a really big city, there's a lot happening, I don't feel comfortable using transit. The intent is that they at least kind of have an experience of how to use it and have been trained how to use it so that they can have good, successful experiences in bigger systems. Cool. All right, so here are my thoughts for the next biennium. So I have found that the different project groups that we have had for this biennium, so and let me know if it gets confusing when I'm referring to the different bienniums, because it's kind of confusing. But so this biennium we're in the 23-25 biennium. The STIF plan that I will be submitting to ODOT this fall is going to be for the 25-27 biennium. So it'll start July 1st, 2025 and goes until June 30th, 2027. I've found the different projects that we have. So the service operations, the mobility, and then capital, and then program reserve has worked really well. I think some of the tasks we can kind of tweak a little bit, but I wanted to get your guys' thoughts to make sure we're serving these community members. So project 1, which is service operations, the task 1, targeted service to vulnerable populations within Hood River County. The purpose of this task would be to fund our Portland medical shuttle that goes a couple times a week into Portland for more dial-a-ride service to take people to medical appointments, and then match for our dial-a-ride. Now, again, I have removed Upper Valley used to be in this task as a targeted service, but since the assumption here is that we will have received the funding that will allow us to split the Upper Valley, so have a fixed route and then more dial-a-ride, it would not necessarily be in here. The match for the dial-a-ride would be included in this bucket, though. Does that make sense? The other thing that this grant that we've applied for, it would allow us to operate dial-a-ride on weekends. So it would be based on availability, because that's now, it would be open to people on Upper Valley City route and Cascade locks on weekends, so it would be limited. So it would still be encouraging people to use the fixed route if they can. But it would allow us to give people who really need that door-to-door service access to services on the weekend. Which I'm constantly hearing from some of those vulnerable community members. Any thoughts about that? Am I kind of going down the right direction there? Okay.
Yeah, me, one thought, I guess, on the ride service on the weekends, was that part of the success and the increase in ridership in Cascade Locks?
So we haven't done dial-a-ride on weekends quite yet.
Okay.
So I'm making the assumption that by the time these funds would be enacted, so by July 1st, 2025, we hopefully will have been awarded that grant that allows me to do dial-a-ride. And this funding source, so this task 1, would fund the match for those services. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
I think the increase on our dial-a-ride has been, so that's just for the weekday services, but I think the increase that we've seen on that service is because we have expanded the service area to include Cascade Locks as well. And I think some people who were using the Upper Valley have been able to start using the dial-a-ride more. Just, yeah. So I think that it's kind of pulled away, unfortunately, from some of our other services. But to me, that just means that those deviated services just weren't really meeting the need.
I may have missed this, but in task 1, you mentioned removing the Upper Valley service because you've got a new funding source, right, for fixed route that will be coupled with expanded dial-a-ride service. Is the source of that funding known, or will you have a good idea of how the various funding sources kind of come together to make sure you continue meeting?
Yeah. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Thank
So the funding source, so that would be 5310 funding. So it's for funding that is specifically targeted for seniors and individuals with disabilities, similar to the STIF formula funding. But the match rate is not quite the same. So so we haven't been told yet if it's been awarded. I am very hopeful because technically the project meets all the criteria that grant is trying to achieve. But because I would have those funds, I would be able to, those funds to increase dial-a-ride, then I can make our fixed route and use the funding sources that we currently have to fund the Upper Valley deviated fixed route. I can just use it for the fixed route version. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Thank you.
And then I think, so the funding source that I applied for that I'm still waiting to hear back, that could potentially be obligated. So I could actually use those funds by potentially November 2024. So that would allow me to get the program started now. And then eventually it would probably fall, not this biennium, but the next biennium, continuing that expanded dial-a-ride service would probably get attributed to STIF funding, STIF formula funding. We also, in the next biennium, are going to have more access to more 5311 funding, which I can also use for that service too. So it's a sustainable source of funding. In case you haven't already caught on, there's a lot of puzzles to these funding sources. And it's actually kind of fun doing the strategizing for it. Okay, but I think the big point here, Kevin, is that I feel comfortable with changing these services because the sources of funding, while maybe short-term would be more on a pilot level, I do have sustainable funding sources that can continue funding that service.
Thanks, Amy.
Yeah. Okay, and so then maintain existing services. So this would be match for 5311 funds that are going to pay for the Hood River City Route Upper Valley. Gorge Mountain is actually a different, it's not 5311, but it's a different funding source, as is the Columbia Gorge Express. And the Columbia Gorge Explorer, which you will be aware of, but it's a new pilot that I'm going to be applying for. And if we get it, what it will do is it'll allow for access to hiking trips. So the Express is a nice quick service between Portland and Hood River. The Explorer would not go all the way to Portland. As of now, the intent here is to have it kind of start from Hood River and it would go all the way to Monoma Falls. But it would also stop at Mitchell Point, Viento, potentially Wyeth, potentially Starvation Creek, and all of those kind of big hubs where we're in, potentially Eagle Creek as well, and Bonneville Fish Hatchery. We might have to trim that down a little bit, but that's the intent of hitting kind of those big hiking areas. But it would also meet up with the Columbia Gorge Express at Cascade Locks and Multnomah Falls, which would allow people to transfer or go back to Portland or to go back to Hood River quicker if they'd like to. But Kevin, this is also the service I was thinking that when Rutherton Park becomes a thing, or the Rutherton Trailhead, that we could also have that meet up with it as well.
Great. Honestly, Amy, I've not been working closely on the project for the extension of the historic trail connection to Rutherton Park, but Dustin Nielsen, planning director, has been much more involved in that. If there's something that I need to communicate to him, I'm happy to, or if you want to get you in touch with him.
Yeah.
Great. I think we had a little bit of time. It doesn't sound like there's an imminent connection. But
no, there's a lot of time, and actually I was thinking I could combine that into another meeting with you and him about our ideas about the Hood River City Route and Upper Valley changes that it's not quite ready for general consumption, but I'd like to float it by you guys and get your thoughts.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank
you. So the other thing that I would like to do with the Columbia Gorge Express is to expand it from 7 trips a day year round and 9 trips a day in the summer to just 9 trips a day year round. It's really hard to kind of do the operational fluctuations of seasonal service, and we already have a lot of other seasonal service, but I think also with the ridership that we have, the demand is there for 9 trips a day. So I think it makes sense to expand it. Okay, so for mobility services, this is a program I still want to continue to make sure that there's a sufficient amount of funding for our low income to the Gorge Transit Connect program, but also our student fare program. And I think our goals for fiscal year 25 to 27 is to do just more outreach to schools and have funding to do those fun pilot programs that would allow us to get more interaction and engagement. Van Pool mobility services. So the Van Pool program, as I kind of shared earlier, has not been as successful as I was hoping it would be. And I think I'm a little bit on the fence of including it for another biennium. But I think it might be good to kind of leave our options open so that we could potentially, maybe the way that we phrase it is that there's money that so if in the next year somebody signs up for the Van Pool, we could continue doing that. but I also want to get your guys' thoughts on that. The other idea that I had that we could potentially use these funds for is after hours taxi vouchers for low-income individuals. So let's say an individual who works at the gas station, their shift doesn't get off until 10, they don't have a car, they don't have other ways to get home. This could be an easy way and safe way for them to get home. So that was my other thoughts. Any initial reactions about maybe taking away van pool and maybe doing a taxi voucher program instead, or just phrasing it in a way where it could potentially encompass both?
Amy, I'll ask a question on the current van pool efforts first. You work really closely with MCED, and has there just been kind of unable to identify employers who are interested in
I think honestly,
sponsoring a project? Is that the key? Do we need an employer? I was also thinking, about employees in districts, kind of geographies like the waterfront, rather than a specific employer as a, origin destination.
that's a good idea. I'm not sure I've necessarily explored maybe doing a pool of employees to general areas. We use Commute Options, who have been doing the outreach, and they basically manage the program for us. I think there's some opportunity there in general. But I like that idea, and I have a meeting with them next week. I'm gonna broach that subject to see if that's something we can get a pool of employers, because we do have to get employers to buy into it. But the board has approved making it so basically we can pay for the entire service with the funds that we have available through our current STIF plan. We just haven't gotten anyone to really take the bite. So I don't know if Kevin, if you have any other ideas about that.
Amy, that was just off the cuff.
Yeah.
It's, from my experience here in Hood River, a lot of folks are priced out of the housing market here and are living in neighboring communities. Thankfully, many of them still working here in this community. And if there were opportunities to van pool, that for whatever reason are more convenient or efficient than using bus service, it seems worth trying to explore it a little bit further before tapping out. And
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. But yeah, okay, cool. I'm also gonna ask Kevin, with your permission, when I talk to Commute Options next week, I'm gonna see if maybe if there's anything where with other areas where they've used some resources from cities, and see if maybe there's any information that can help point us in the right direction or get us the right contacts with maybe different employers. I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but if I can reach out to you maybe at a later date after I've had this meeting to see if there's any potential ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Okay. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how, I can see it's very much needed for that. Stuff into that, into need for that.
Yeah, and then I think we tried reaching out to Best Western, and I think it was just we were having a hard time getting in touch with the right person. Actually, I think Providence, that might be another, if you have any contacts, that I could reach out to.
We have such varied shifts and all of
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah, so that might be hard.
I've heard Cardinal folks are having a hard time getting evening shift.
So
once the buses.
Yeah, so we've tried talking to them, and I'm forgetting what the issue is with them, but I know that hasn't progressed. but I'm not entirely sure the reason.
Maybe like on Brian's.
Not to my knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the ones that we finished up.
Yeah, it's Cardinal. I don't think we've heard anything back, but I'll check in on that. Okay, and I realize we are almost at 5. So if you have any other ideas that come with you, please shoot them my way. And then also, I want to continue funding Sarah's program and ensuring that we have travel training services. I cannot say how much I think that has helped our operations in giving access to community members who need help to ride the bus. Cool. And then capital expansion and replacement. So I am I would like to expand this project. So not only is it the match for vehicles, but also for bus stop infrastructure and facility expansion, which we need to, with these changes that we're looking at for Hood River City Route the next year or so, we're going to be having to add bus stops. But also we have several informal, or not informal, but we have some temporary signage that we need to make temporary, or not temporary, and hopefully have a spot for people to sit. And we are also expanding our facilities and looking for new property to move our park and ride, so that we can make our current park and ride expanded facilities for our bus and maintenance, because we are over capacity with buses. And then program reserve, again, just kind of having a little bit of funds to cover unanticipated costs. I know I went through those last couple of projects pretty quickly. Any questions or feedback? Okay. Or Kevin?
Nothing to add right now, Amy. I understand we're close to time, so I may reach out to you separately.
Yes, please do. I would love that. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Our next meeting I have in October, and I probably should have put the date on there. I believe it's the week of the 14th. And I'll reach out when it gets a little closer with meeting materials. We're going to go over the more formalized STIF plan for 25 to 27 and the low income definition, and prioritize the STIF discretionary and STN applications. Cool. All right. Thank you guys. Sorry we're a couple minutes over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. Hope you feel better, Lexi.